Well. Okay. Well, at least I didn't get taken down. That's kind of shitty that they did that, but it is what it is. Let's see. That really sucks. That channel was pretty cool. I'm surprised they are blocking it. Kind of really stinks. I was enjoying that channel. All right. Oh, dang. Well, let's see if this one does the same thing.
Les légions étrangères, c'est une famille et surtout état d'esprit. Les légionnaires.
So, all right. Well, you're back. This is something that I kind of wanted to watch before. It's about the French Foreign Legion. I had a crazy thought of joining it at one point. And, man, I hope they don't fuck me on this one, too. Let's see.
Quand vous allez gagner votre képi blanc, vous allez comprendre, on devient légionnaire et on reste jusqu'à la mort.
Abritez-vous, kurwa, personne ici.
Allez, derrière.
Derrière. Point de charge, le tireur reste là.
Daniel, t'es pas aligné. Daniel, aligne-toi. Bonhomme, tu bouges encore le bras comme ça, je te casse la main. Même si je fais une crise cardiaque, ben je bouge pas. Ok? Rigueur. Discipline.
So I had thought about joining this after my divorce, my first marriage, and I wanted something to do. I ended up trying to go into the Air Force, and then I had a fucking car accident that fucked me on that. But the French Foreign Legion is kind of interesting if you want to adventure. But the thing that sucks is, like, you are basically Hamburger for 4 years, and they will send you off into the worst places, and you are the front lines, and you're getting, I think the rate was like $40,000 a year, which is fucking garbage. And you get like the worst conditions. Oh, Jesus Christ. God damn it. Same fucking thing here, too. Why you guys gotta fuck me like that, man? You guys are dicks, dude. Is this just gonna happen to all the videos now? Do I have to go back to watching more? Let's watch more Freemason shit, because that stuff doesn't usually get, let's see. Are they going to do that again? Let me find more Freemason shit about Albert Pike. God, you guys are such fucking pricks about this shit. I wonder if they're just cracking down on everything, or it just happens to be just the stuff that I'm picking, because I didn't have that problem before. All right, that warning went away. So looks like I'm okay now. Let me look at more of this stuff with the World War III, because that was kind of interesting. State controversy over the Confederate General Albert Pike. This audio book. Legends of the Craft. Sorry, I'm trying to find something good on Albert Pike. Okay, this looks good.
Brother Master Masons, soon to become masters of the royal secret, welcome to the Minneapolis Valley of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Albert Pike. For the last 32 years of my time on Earth, I served you faithfully, if not well, as your Sovereign Grand Commander. Since that time, for the last 120 years, I have been an active member of the Celestial Lodge. Now, I'm not saying it's a difficult or lengthy procedure to be asked into the line in the Celestial Lodge, but as an example, the junior steward is George Washington. Seated in the east in King Solomon's chair is, well, it's King Solomon. I had occasion to ask the great king about that chapter in 1 Kings wherein he took in hand his royal sword and was about to cleave a child in twain to settle the dispute between two Israelite women. Fortunately, the affair was settled amicably and the child was spared. And the wise king assured me upon his Masonic word that he was just bluffing. Now, I have been asked here this evening to speak to you about your quest for further light in Masonry and to speak about some of my accomplishments during my lifetime. The first I will gladly do, the second I must respectfully refuse. Though a labor of love, it is for others, including yourself, to decide on the value of my work. You have already taken the first steps to Masonic knowledge and enlightenment. Over the next few weeks, you will have the opportunity to expand greatly upon that knowledge and take back with you to your Blue Lodge that which you have learned and which I hope will aid you for the rest of your life. What I would like to speak to you about tonight is the path that led me to Masonic light. Now, my memory is not as good as it was, say, 120 years ago, but I'll try to muddle through. I will also not bore you with a great number of dates. However, there are several which I think are essential to this narrative. The first being April 6th, 1635, when the first pike set forth from the sailing vessel James onto the fertile soil of this blessed land. Since that time, my family has contributed greatly to the arts and sciences, politics, religion, and the military. Nicholas Pike, a close confidant of General George Washington, wrote the first book on arithmetic in this new land. Zebulon Pike, noted for his charting of the West, Spent a deal of time just a few short miles from this valley negotiating on behalf of the federal government with the native Indian tribes for the purchase of certain plots of land, one being a 6-square-mile area on the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi River, whereupon is situated Fort Snelling. For this and other services to the nation, they named a mountain for him out in Colorado Territory. The second date is December 29th, 1809. When I was born to Sarah and Benjamin Pike near the city of Boston, Massachusetts. Though rich in spirit, we were poor of pocket, as was the nature of most of our neighbors and friends. My father was a small farmer and supplemented his income by working long hours as a cobbler. Unfortunately, this rigorous schedule contributed greatly to his early demise. Now, my mother, Sarah, being a most beautiful and talented woman, did, after a proper period of bereavement, remarry to a famous inventor of that day named Paul Pillsbury, who, like my father, never really received the financial rewards that his work deserved. Oh, we had food on the table and clothes on our back, often secondhand or hand-me-downs, and a warm place to sleep. And I was afforded a fine education in both public and private schools. In fact, at the tender age of 15, due in some part to my rising notoriety as a reader and writer of poetry, I obtained work as a school teacher, actually teaching people older than myself. Having always dreamed of rising above my humble station in life, I applied to Harvard University for admission. Having passed their rigorous examinations, I was accepted. However, the requirement that I prepay my tuition for my freshman and sophomore years being far beyond my capabilities, I was forced to withdraw with, I might add, some extremely bruised feelings. Those feelings were somewhat ameliorated in later years when, due to my public persona, they offered me an honorary degree and I promptly refused. Now,
I can put on the trannies until morale improves.
Was the want of the youth of that day, the path to fame and fortune and adventure lay by following the arc of the sun to the west. So in 1831, I and my childhood friend Rufus. Now, much has been written about how perilous and penniless and friendless was that journey. However, though not traveling in the lap of luxury, we made our way by foot and horseback, stagecoach, and finally by flatboat down to the village of St. Louis, Missouri, then the gateway to the west. There,
I feel like I'm not learning the true history, and I feel like I'm getting this guy's like romantic view and just factual information.
After a short respite rejuvenated, we moved on to Independence, Missouri, one day to become the home of one of our most illustrious brethren, most worshipful brother Harry S. Truman. Yes, I do keep myself abreast of the affairs of the world. There we joined a party of hunters and trappers and traversed down the fabled Santa Fe Trail to the area which is now known as New Mexico, but was at that time still part of the Mexican Republic. Sadly, there I parted company with my childhood friend Rufus and traveled on to Taos, where I obtained a fine horse, a pack mule, 6 beaver traps, tobacco, powder, and some good galena lead, and joined a party of 70-some like-minded souls and entered into Indian territory to make my fortune. Now, I had known in my lifetime some hunger and deprivation. But to say I was totally unprepared for what lay ahead would be a gross understatement. We entered a land so savage and untamed that it would have been unbearable were it not for its raw beauty. Beset by hostile Indians, racing before raging prairie fires, faced with brutally hot days and freezing cold nights, we came perilously close to death. In fact, although only 23 years of age, I was forced at one point to take command of this motley band. After 60 frightening days of constant skirmishes with the natives, abject hunger, and but a few beaver in our kit, we turned back towards civilization, crossing both the Red and Brazos River, searching endlessly and fruitlessly for our elusive prey. Often lost and in grave straits, we were fortunate to come upon a village of friendly Osage Indians who threw a magnificent 3-day feast in our honor and probably saved our lives. I believe this was the moment when I first formed my satisfying relationship with the Indian nations, which so benefited my life and I hope in some sort theirs. Well, upon resuming our journey, we were again met with obstacles that were simply beyond our capabilities, and finally, with just a few ragged companions, we turned north and east, heading back towards civilization on a trek of over 1,300 miles. Finally, horseless, broken, having sold my rifle for a few pounds of rancid meat, I was forced to cover the last 650 miles on foot until I reached the safe haven of Fort Smith, Arkansas, and there began a new chapter in my life. Though arduous, my time in Indian territory shaped in me strengths and beliefs that are still with me today. My adventures in the wilderness were not at an end, however. Shortly after arriving at Fort Smith, word came that 1,500 rampaging Comanche braves under the leadership of Chief Capote were joining with other Indian tribes to attack and destroy Fort Towson. Brother Jim Bowie and a party of 100 volunteers were already on their way to assist the garrison.
I got a question. If all of these Indians were always like trying to fuck up anyone that came out, and then there was certain tribes that were friendly, why didn't those tribes just get fucked over too? I would assume that they got completely run over as well.
Of the fort. And in Fort Smith, Colonel Arbuckle was forming another volunteer group to which I joined. Well, the Indian nations did indeed attack the fort, and after a fierce and bloody battle, were finally repulsed. We lost some 20 dead and 23 wounded, and the Indian nations lost over 200 souls. Upon returning to Fort Smith, destitute and without a clear plan for the future, I was fortunate that my exploits at Fort Towson had earned me the patronage of several prominent military leaders of the Arkansas Territory, and they took me in and cared for me and nursed me back to health, it being severely damaged during my travails in the wilderness and during the Battle of Fort Towson. Upon regaining my health, I began looking for work in my chosen field as a school teacher. Now, work being scarce in that field, I was forced to travel some 40 miles downriver until I came upon an empty schoolhouse. Upon learning that the last teacher had left over 2 years ago, I was able, using all my cunning and guile, to procure a position for the princely sum of $3 a month in Lake Mountain Pigs. Fortunately, the workload was commensurate with the pay, and I was able to spend a great deal of time with my writing, more especially my poetry. After a short time, I began writing editorials in support of the Whig candidate for the Arkansas Territory under the nom de plume of Casco. These came to the attention of the publisher of the Little Rock Advocate, who, upon learning my name, offered me a position with that fine newspaper, which I readily accepted. From that time forward, I began to gain some prominence with the movers and shakers of the Arkansas Territory, but that discussion is for a different time.
I feel like that's pretty relevant and important.
What I would like to do now is to speak to you about the two seminal events which, for better or worse, made me the man I was to become. The first was my meeting Miss Mary Hamilton, a most handsome, virtuous young woman of the territories. Now, I had always been known to have somewhat of an eye for the ladies and they for me, but upon meeting Miss Mary, none other could measure up, and I soon set my cap to obtain her hand in marriage, using my poetry to set me apart from her other suitors. I was soon able to overcome her seeming reluctance, and we were wed at a gala event at a magnificent plantation owned by friends of her family.
Yeah, don't ever trust a guy that writes poetry, let alone writing, but like fucking poetry. That's a sinister person.
With the substantial dowry from that wedding, Miss Murray and I were able to purchase full ownership in the Advocate. And with our fortune set, we began building our home for the first of our 11 children. I am pleased to say that that home still stands in Little Rock today and is considered a paean of architecture of that period of the South. I owe its existence in great part to the good graces of a General Thomas Hart Benton, commanding general of the 29th Iowa Volunteers and a past master of the Grand Lodge of Iowa, who in 1864, while occupying the city, learned that some Yankee scalawags were about to burn my home, and so surrounded it with his troops and made it his headquarters, thus saving my fine library of Masonic and philosophical works. My adventures as a colonel in the Union Army during the Mexican conflict, and as a brigadier general in the Confederacy during that unfortunate war between the states, as well as my now famous duel with Colonel John Roan, who was to become one of my closest confidants, and my work with the Indian nations, both militarily and legally, are too long to go into tonight, and they're well documented if you have interest. I would like to finish by speaking to you about that which binds us together and became the necessary ingredient for the fulfillment of my life. By that I speak of my initiation into Freemasonry. I have but one regret, and that is that it took so long for me to kneel before the altar of our gentle craft. Upon being raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason, I threw myself headlong into the quest for Masonic knowledge. In but 8 short years, I became master of my Blue Lodge, Master of the Royal Secret, an active member of the Supreme Council, and as I had previously stated, in 1858, Sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern jurisdiction of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, a position I held until my death. I bring this up for only one good reason. Ever since that day when I knelt at the altar and became a true and faithful brother to every man in this room, I have thanked the Supreme Creator of the universe for that blessing. I had always known intuitively that there was something greater, some moral and spiritual and intellectual goal that was always just beyond my grasp. The wisdom of the ages as exemplified in Masonic education became the key with which I unlocked the door to the path of light. This evening, as I have perused this magnificent temple and
to be even,
listened to the enthusiasm and fervor of the brothers of this valley, I know my efforts were not in vain. For you new brothers about to embark upon this journey, judge me by the work that you are about to experience. If you are filled with an increased awareness, my life will have been justified. If your love and understanding of your Creator, your country, your family, and your brothers.
This guy really fucking loves the Freemasons. It's crazy that this guy would just just fillet this guy. You're never gonna be powerful, and you're just blowing this guy for no fucking reason. That's crazy. I just found this though. I guess I had watched it before.
a whole generation of Americans has grown up taking the Federal Reserve System as much for granted as the United States Post Office. But there are many others who can still recall the time quite vividly when there was no Federal Reserve System.
The fucking, just the eagerness this guy is to just tout how great the Federal Reserve is. Oh man, propaganda used to be so great.
Time like the money panic of 1907.
Ralph?
Oh, John.
Howdy.
How's business, John?
Well, you don't have to ask me. You know. It's bad, Ralph. Just plain bad. This here money panic's really getting to be something. My customers can't pay their bills, but I gotta let them have groceries. They gotta eat. But that wasn't what you wanted to see me about.
No, John, it wasn't. I'm afraid I have bad news for you. I'll give it to you straight. I'm having to call my loans.
You mean when my note comes due next week?
I won't be able to renew it, John. I've got to ask you to pay it off.
But Ralph, wait a minute. When you let me have that money, you told me that you'd renew the note when the time came. I can't lay my hands on any $2,000. You know that.
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry to have to ask you this, but I've got to have it. All of it.
But Ralph, what's going on here? I've sold groceries in this town and done business with you for a long time. I was good enough for that loan 3 months ago. How come I'm not good enough for it today? You can't talk this way to me, Ralph. I'm not going to take it from you.
Look, will you let me explain this to you? This has nothing to do with you as a person or me as a person. It's this money panic we're in, John. It's got me just as much as it's got you.
How?
Well, John, it's like this. A bank like mine, or anybody else's, is in the business of lending people money at interest.
Well, why don't you keep on doing it?
That's just what I'm trying to explain to you. Now, here's how a bank like mine operates. You have a bank account here. We call it your deposit account. People like you deposit your dollars with us. You own those dollars, and we hold ourselves liable to pay them back to you at any time. So from our point of view, your deposits are our liabilities, and that's what we call them, deposit liabilities. But until you want your dollars back, we can use them, that is, most of them. The law requires us to keep some of them as legal reserves, roughly one reserve dollar for every 4 or 5 deposit dollars. The rest we can lend or invest.
What's that got to do with calling my loan?
That's what I'm leading up to, John. Now, let's see what happened when I made you that loan of $2,000. You signed a promissory note for $2,000, and I credited your deposit account with $2,000. You didn't come and deposit $2,000 in cash, but you did give me your note for $2,000, and in exchange for your note, I created $2,000 of new deposit liabilities in your favor. This $2,000 is just as much of a liability to me as $2,000 you deposit in cash. I've got to back up both kinds of deposit liability with my reserve dollars. That note of yours and others like it we call commercial paper. This paper and other kinds of paper like bonds we buy and government securities we buy make up our portfolio of assets.
If I get the drift of what you're saying, Ralph, you've got to have enough of what you call reserve dollars before you can make me a loan.
That's it, exactly, John. And this is where my correspondent bank comes in.
Correspondent bank?
Yes, a bank like mine usually deposits its legal reserves and other unused reserves.
You see, John, I borrow money at a very small fraction of what I lend it out to you. And I'm here to fuck you in the ass.
Dollars in a large city bank called its correspondent bank. This bank operates the same way we do. It has deposit liabilities, reserves, and a portfolio, same as we have, only on a larger scale. Now, in ordinary times, when you need bank credit, and I don't have enough reserve dollars to back up a loan I want to make to you, I just get some extra reserve dollars from my correspondent bank.
But how do you do that?
I either borrow them on my own promissory note or I rediscount some paper.
Well, how come I can't do that? Are you saying that I need to have some kind of special relationship with a secretive group of people and have meetings that I'm not invited to?
Rediscount?
Yes. Remember when you brought me Frank Lewis's promissory note for $100? I cashed it for you, didn't I? I discounted it for you.
Yes, and that was a mighty big convenience for me, too, to get $95 in ready cash on Frank's note, right when I needed it.
And that $5 interest I charged you is what I call the discount rate. Well, just as I can discount a note for you, my correspondent bank can rediscount that note for me when I need extra reserve dollars. In other words, John, I can take some paper from my portfolio and offer it to my correspondent bank for rediscounting. When they rediscount it, they take it into their portfolio, just like I take your note into my portfolio. And they credit my reserve dollar balance, just like I credit your deposit account. And just like you can draw on your deposits in cash, I can then draw on my reserve deposits in cash. This cash is the kind of money you have in your pocket right now.
Oh, you mean like this national banknote?
That's right. My correspondent bank is allowed to issue as many of these notes as it can back up with certain specified government securities.
But Ralph, if they can print banknotes, how come they're short of money? You said they were short, didn't you?
It's because they've issued all the notes they can against the securities they hold. They have no other.
But what if they just keep printing it and just pretend like they have more securities and just keep printing it and then give me more money?
The way of issuing any more money. They're short. That's why they're calling their notes, too, just like me.
Everybody's scared, Ralph. That's what it is. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Everybody that loaned money to anybody else just wants that money back right now. I've got to pay you. You've got to pay your corresponding Citibank.
And my depositors, John. People.
My depositors have been kicked out of 109 countries. John, you don't understand. If they get kicked out of 110, well, who's to say there's not 111?
Are drawing money out of my bank by the cartload.
It's just like I said, Ralph. Everybody's plumb scared. Everybody's got to pay his debts to everybody else. And then what? Do I have to go bankrupt? Does Bob Peters over at the drugstore have to go bankrupt? Have you got to go out of business? I'm asking you, Ralph, why do we have to be in a mess like this? Do you mean to sit there and tell me that in this man's country, there's nothing we can do about a mess like this we're in?
Sure, John, sure. There's something we can do about it. Some have done it for many years now.
Done what?
Gotten themselves some sort of a central or reserve banking system where a bank like mine can always get reserve dollars when they need them.
Well, for God's sake, man, why don't we do just that?
It's up to Congress, John. It's been up to Congress for close on 100 years.
Congress could delay no longer. For 5 years, it worked intensively on the problem. And by the time Governor Woodrow Wilson of New Jersey was elected to be the next president of the United States...
Look at that saint right there. They should have edited in a little halo over Mr. Wilson's head. I guess they did put a little thing of light. And this guy's just bowing to him, paying fealty.
Preliminary draft of reserve banking legislation was ready.
But this conference is important, Dr. Katurkin. Carter Glass is journeying up all the way from Washington for it.
I know, Governor Wilson. But I don't want the next president of the United States on my hands with pneumonia. You've just come through a very strenuous campaign. And besides, Christmas of 1912 is going to go down in history as the coldest we've ever had here in Princeton.
Look, I have a couple of friends on this giant boat, the Titanic, on their way over here right now.
Sorry, Doctor, but Carter Glass and his subcommittee have been working 8 months on this Reserve Bank legislation. And I regard this matter of such capital importance that this conference cannot be put off another day.
All right, Governor Wilson. But promise me you'll get as much rest as you can. And you let them do the talking.
Come in, gentlemen. Come in. Oh, you must be cold.
Old Governor? Yes, I suppose it is. But Dr. Willis and I have been so engrossed in discussing our banking bill that... Oh, may I present Dr. Willis? He's economic advisor to our subcommittee. And incidentally, my good friend.
Dr. Willis, it was good of you to come with Mr. Glass in this weather.
It's good of you to see us, Governor Wilson. We really should have postponed this meeting.
Not at all, gentlemen, not at all. This legislation is long overdue, and I'm not going to let a little fever stand in the way.
A memorandum, Governor, contains the major provisions of our proposed banking and currency bill.
Fine. Ah, something hot won't do you any harm, gentlemen. Help yourselves while I look this over.
Go ahead and bend me over this couch. I have no feeling down there. Just use me. I'm a bad boy.
Bank called the Federal Reserve Bank. That will be, in a very real sense, a banker's bank. A bank where ordinary banks can rediscount paper. A bank which will issue currency. Yes, Glass, your bill really seems to go to the heart of the problem. It will now be possible for banks to increase their reserves at all times. And we will not have to fear the kind of panic we had in 1907.
Exactly, Governor. Banks that become members of the Federal Reserve System will always be able to get high-grade paper rediscounted at a Federal Reserve Bank.
They'll deposit reserves with a Federal Reserve Bank, just as they now do with their correspondent banks. And then, when a member bank takes paper to a Federal Reserve Bank for rediscounting, it will get its reserve account credited with the appropriate amount, payable in our proposed Federal Reserve notes. And this new currency will always be available because it'll be based on the very paper which is rediscounted with the Federal Reserve Bank. We propose to back this new currency dollar for dollar by rediscounted paper in the Reserve Bank's portfolio, and in addition by the Reserve System's gold reserve.
Ah, the more currency needed, the more paper will be offered Reserve Banks for rediscounting. And the more paper is rediscounted, the more Federal Reserve notes can be issued. A very ingenious way of furnishing the currency with elasticity, gentlemen.
In contrast to the present national banknote currency, based as it is on a fixed amount of government securities.
I must say, Governor, I am gratified that you believe that a sound currency can be based upon rediscounted paper.
I certainly think so, Glass. But what about the rediscounting rate, gentlemen? The rediscounting rate of a reserve bank can have fundamental and far-reaching effects on a country's economic conditions. Lower the rediscounting rate and you encourage bank credit. Raise the rate and you discourage bank credit. Who is going to decide what the new Federal Reserve Bank's rediscounting rate is going to be?
The rates will be decided by each of the several regional reserve banks which this bill contemplates, Governor.
I thought you'd say that, Glass. Your bill differs from all previous efforts in this country to establish reserve banking services in that you propose not a single central bank, but a number of regionalized reserve banks, each serving the need of its own reserve district. And you made careful provisions for the local administration of each reserve bank by having the majority of directors chosen by member banks, and the rest by the coordinating commission, which you propose to set up in Washington. However, Glass, I have one important addition to suggest. I suggest that this coordinating commission or board in Washington be strengthened and given ultimate responsibility for establishing and maintaining a national reserve policy, including the rediscounting rate. I think it only fair to say to you that I am for a plenty of centralization, but not too much. Just enough to ensure that national problems will be handled in the national interest, whether the sectional interests of some locality or other jump with the national interest or not. Meanwhile, I think, Glass, that you've come very far on the right track, and I'm looking forward keenly to working with you on this bill.
362 days after the famous Princeton Conference, the Federal Reserve Act became law.
It is a matter of real gratification to me that in the case of this fundamental piece of legislation,
I don't understand. Where are all the yarmulkes?
there should have been so many votes cast for it on both sides of the House and Senate. It cannot, therefore, be called a partisan measure.
The preamble of the act read, to provide for the establishment of Federal Reserve banks, to furnish an elastic currency, to afford means of rediscounting commercial paper, to establish a more effective supervision of banking in the United States. But within a very few years, the Federal Reserve's main task was generally recognized to be even greater. And today its main task is to promote stability in the country's economy by using its influence to bring about increases or decreases in the country's banking reserves. When money threatens to get too scarce, Federal Reserve authorities act to make more reserve dollars available. When money threatens to get too plentiful, they act to make less reserve dollars available. There are three forms of action they can take. For one thing, as Woodrow Wilson pointed out in the Princeton Conference,
lower the rediscounting rate and you encourage bank credit. Raise the rate and you discourage bank credit.
Second, reserves may be increased or decreased by the open market operations of Federal Reserve banks. When a Federal Reserve Bank goes into the open market to buy government securities for, say, $1 million from a securities dealer, the dealer deposits the Federal Reserve check in his bank. The bank sends the check to the Reserve Bank for collection, and the Reserve Bank in turn credits that bank's reserve balance with $1 million. In other words, by buying $1 million worth of securities in the open market, the Federal Reserve Bank adds $1 million to the reserves of member banks, just as if it had rediscounted $1 million worth of paper from their portfolios. And on the other hand, by selling $1 million worth of securities in the open market, the Federal Reserve Bank decreases member bank reserves by $1 million. In recent years, open market operations have far overshadowed other methods of bringing about increases or decreases in banking reserves. Finally, under more recent changes in the law, member banks can be required, within prescribed limits, to increase or decrease the ratio of their legal reserves to their deposit liabilities, thus changing the amount of reserves available for backing up bank credit. By 1929, the Federal Reserve banks had succeeded remarkably well in curtailing money shortages like the one of 1907. One example was the effect of Federal Reserve operations on money rates. Business drops off in volume after Christmas, rises around Easter, drops off again during the summer, then rises again at harvest time and at Christmas. In the days before the Federal Reserve System, the interest rates people paid for many bank loans follow this seasonal swing closely. And even in normal times, there used to be a very great difference between the low and the high interest rates for any year. Through the Federal Reserve System's stabilizing influence, the seasonal swing in money rates had flattened out by 1929 to an almost straight line. But in that same year of 1929,
it's almost like there was like a market incentive that was actually kind of keeping the stuff in check.
The country was plunged into the most devastating depression of its entire economic history. In the light of the grave new problems brought on by the Depression, the Federal Reserve Act was amended a number of times. The last of these great amending acts was passed in 1935. In April of that year, hearings on the legislation began before a Senate subcommittee. Chairman of this subcommittee was Senator Carter Glass, who at the age of 77 was better newspaper copy than ever.
A great many problems. To some, I know the answers. To others, I don't. So, pull no punches, and I won't either.
Would you say, Senator, that after this new bill is passed, the Federal Reserve System would be able to prevent another depression?
That's a fair question, but I don't think that I or any other man can answer it. You see, back in 1913, when we framed the original act, we just did not foresee the sort of thing that hit us in 1929. We had in mind the old-time money panics like the one in 1907.
But the original act has been changed, Senator, several times. And we've been told the new legislation embodies the lessons of the Depression.
So it does. In the Act of 1933, for example, we set up federal insurance for bank deposits. And in the Securities Exchange Act, we put a stop to a number of abuses, like stock market speculation with bank credit.
And in addition, the Federal Reserve now has authority to establish margin requirements for stock purchases. So, Senator, may I ask again, do you think we'll be able to prevent another depression?
I'll answer your question this way. I'm not so simple as to believe that you can legislate human frailty out of existence. But I do think that we have lessened the chances that another depression of the same type will be visited upon us again. More than that, I can't say.
Don't you think, Senator, that the new bill is going a little far on the centralization side with this new open market committee?
You gentlemen know that I have stood all along for a decentralized system, one with regional responsibility, one in which bankers and businessmen cooperate, the sort of system President Wilson called a democracy of credit. But I have come to think that something else that President Wilson once said applies with even greater force to open market operations. I am for a plenty of centralization, he said, but not too much. Now, experience has shown us that open market operations should be coordinated for the system as a whole. As you know, these operations have grown to be more important than all other methods of credit control, like the rediscount rate, for example.
But who decides, Senator, whether the country's credit conditions call for buying or selling on the open market? Is any one man that wise?
No, and that's just it. No one man, nor any one reserve bank is that wise. That's why this bill sets up an open market committee on which both the individual reserve banks and the Federal Reserve Board of Governors will be represented.
Will the Secretary of the Treasury continue to be a member of the board?
No, sir, he will not.
Why not, Senator?
Because the Treasury's job is to procure money for the government, and naturally they want to borrow it as cheaply as possible. The Treasury is not primarily responsible for general credit conditions. The Federal Reserve System has the responsibility for credit policy, And that's why it should not be subordinated to any other government agency in doing its job. Of this, I am convinced, whatever the future may hold for our country.
He really sold that well. I hope nothing bad comes of that.
Neither Carter Glass nor any man could have foreseen in 1935 how the Federal Reserve System could be used in a time of grave national peril to smooth out the mountainous problems of financing a global war. Nor could he have foreseen the exact nature of the new monetary problems which the war would leave as one of its legacies. But the principle he announced back in 1935 is as sound today as it was then.
As I look back over 25 years of banking legislation, I know this one thing. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was not intended to be, and it never could have been, a final or a complete document. New times bring new problems, and we must always modify the Federal Reserve System to meet them. Even after this bill becomes law, it will still be true that the Federal Reserve System is a piece of unfinished business.
Carter Glass was right. It was true in 1935, as it is today, that among the reasons for the far-reaching and fundamental contributions of the Federal Reserve System to our economic progress is the flexibility of the system, its ability to adjust to the challenge of that constant change which is inherent in our growing economy.
Well, from one propaganda to the other. God, dude. They cracked down on the fucking Rhodesia shit. They really cracked down on the South Africa video. And then they really pushed this one to the top in that Albert Pike monologue. Let's go continue this video that we started to watch yesterday about the secretive billionaire city that they're building outside of Travis Air Force Base in California, and the ties to the Democratic Party.
The California Forever story, which really began in 2018, is just one dimension of the larger future world's prospect that America is no longer a sanctuary, right? 2018 and forward, a military revolution has sort of been occurring, and that's sort of what they call it in terms of doctrine. And we're reshifting the focus, or they are, to mainland U.S. homeland affairs, which we have neglected and left wide open and vulnerable to attack as a result of the post-9/11 PNAC, Middle East focus, the counterterrorism paradigm. In other words, at least that's what I call it. But now the paradigm is shifting, aka there's a military revolution, a doctrine change to shift that attention to the U.S. homeland. Our critical infrastructure is wide open and able to be exploited. And by the way, all of this, I'm not just making up, this is like a compilation of the last 2 years, a year and a half actually, of various reports from NGOs, the military itself, intelligence agencies, but mostly think tank, nonprofit type groups like RAND corporations, people that have like real major sway in terms of military strategy, and thinking. Like our entire nuclear arms strategy came from the RAND corporation, and they make these reports to try and like solve problems, right? And part of that problem solving is anticipating disruptive and emerging technology and next generation technology. I really like those reports, and I've spent the last 2 years reading them for you guys. I just haven't been able to actually, reading them takes enough effort because they're not all as exciting, right? It's not like I'm sitting there, it's a page turner. The scary thing is though, like some of them are, and they're incredibly enlightening. It's probably the closest you can get to ever having a crystal ball. So anyway, 2018, this Flannery California Forever, this billionaire utopia project. What it is in 2018, a bunch of people billionaire Silicon Valley investors. Nobody knew that at the time. A company called Flannery Associates comes into the area and starts buying up parcels next to Travis Air Force Base, one of the most critical military installations on the West Coast, right? Uh, and it's a big mystery. Nobody knows who they are. Oh my God, what are they doing? What are their intentions? Who are these mysterious investors? And 2018 went into 2019, right? And just as the first half of 2019, all of a sudden their parcel purchases in Solano County dramatically accelerated. All of a sudden, they're buying thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, tens of thousands.
I kept meaning to bring this up yesterday, but does anyone remember this Lieberland thing where the guy was creating his own little micronation? I'm wondering whatever came of that.
Of acres, all within the vicinity of Travis Air Force Base. Nobody knew their identities at the time. Nobody knew where the money was coming from. This is millions, and then tens of millions, hundreds of millions. Guys, close to $1 billion this group spent. From 2018 to 20, or just in 2019 alone, this group spent about $800 million buying incredibly sensitive land in Solano County, right outside of Travis Air Force Base. But it gets worse because as the purchases went on, they ended up surrounding the base, and nobody knew anything. From 2018 to 2023, nobody knew who they were or what their intentions were. What was most mysterious about this case is the mysterious ignorance that all of them had, ranging from local representatives, all, mayors, okay, like Mayor Moy, Catherine Moy, the Rio Vista mayor, and then you have congressmen as well. Sorry about that, I had to pause the stream there, my fault. Then you have congressmen that were legitimately concerned over this. They went on television over and over, appeared in media articles over and over, calling for formal investigations. Who are these people? Because in less than a year, they became the largest landowner in Solano County, California. They nearly spent close to $1 billion. Okay, and do you want to know how much land that amounts to? The expansive lands they bought surrounding Travis Air Force Base, a critical military installation, because guess what? That's like the gateway to the Pacific is what they call it. That's like the main deployment point for the Indo-Pacific region. All of our humanitarian aid efforts. Travis was like one of the first to send aid over to 9/11 in New York. They were over on the West Coast. Like, that's a key position. The most air traffic is going in and out. They shuttle VIPs from Travis as well. And at the height of ongoing incursions of U.S. airspace, U.S. facilities, think of the Chinese spy balloon incident, 2023, last year. Then the high altitude shoot down events, some featuring Canada and a U.S. joint operation shooting unknown aerial phenomenon out of the sky, unknown air. That's literally what the NORAD report said about them. So there's a theme developing here. A lot of it's aerial, but more broadly, it's about homeland defense, homeland security, or lack thereof. All of this is a physical manifestation of the neglect to the U.S. homeland from the counterterrorism paradigm. And not only that, it's purposeful. In my opinion, for my reason, we can see that it's purposeful. What we're seeing happening right now, I mean, look at the borders, basically wide open. Okay, the UK is going through a major crisis with migrants. It's not anywhere near like that here. Plus, we're a way bigger country, so space, physical geography matters. And that's just the thing, right? Physical geography. Since America's inception, we have enjoyed the luxury of peace and essentially invincibility since America was founded, just by geography alone. We have allies to the north and south of us, and to the just off our west coast and our east coast, we're flanked by gigantic oceans that separate any potential adversary by miles and miles and miles. We're a floating fortress, and we don't have to worry about like interregional conflict. We're not fighting Canada or getting into spats with Mexico, right? So for a long time, gunpowder is established, okay? Fast forward, developments, technologically, weaponry develops. Okay, we go from horseback bullies to riflemen. Nobody can touch us. America is armed to the teeth, rifles behind every blade of grass, as they say. Separated by the oceans, so
I'm skeptical of being secured by the oceans. Like, I feel like that's our biggest weakness now. Maybe like back in the day, the ocean was a guarantor of safety, but now everything, like, the worst thing you could do is being attacked by a submarine.
land invasion historically has always been impossible, and so has, as well, any form of kinetic strikes. Even the most advanced of our adversaries historically have never really had the capability to strike us with, say, a ballistic missile or anything in any substantial way. And then, you get the Soviet Union, you get the Cold War, right? The nuke fears, where, it starts to become a reality that America can be hit here at home. But we quickly develop defenses against that, right? Things were kind of, this was unfolding over decades, essentially, obviously. But still, now we have a country, an adversary.
Yeah, we were talking about weather control the other day, about having the hurricane coincidentally dig up a bunch of stuff after Hurricane Helene in the Carolinas, reveal a bunch of quartz that can be used for wafers, and the Taiwanese building a new plant for them in Texas.
That has nuclear capabilities, and they can hit us at home. But we got defenses, but, But then as time goes on, what happens is not only do other countries get more powerful, get more resources, whatever, and start to acquire those same weapons. So a lot, from now until 2050, a lot of the countries in the Middle East, non-nuclear countries, will become nuclear countries. Allies will form, collaborative partnerships between nations will form, treaties. So it's falling into nukes, and very powerful weapons, WMDs and so on, are falling into now these countries that historically have never had access to them, and now they're entering the playing board, okay? And then you introduce rap.
Sorry, speaking of open borders, by the way, has anyone seen this? Let me try to open this in a...
Live here in Israel, and there you see an impact on the ground. And remember, there are hundreds of these rockets and missiles happening, we're told, at the same time. This
is getting pretty serious.
Is likely the third wave.
Some of the explosions that I'm seeing happening in Israel are pretty wild. Dang it, what did I do with that one video? There we go.
An evolution of technology into the mix. And what you have is not only state actors, but non-state actors coming into possession of very powerful, now affordable, now more mobile than ever technologies. Biological weaponry is more accessible than ever given the advancements in genetic engineering, gain of function, and so on, okay? I mean, we just came out of a COVID pandemic that seems to possibly have originated from like a roguish, this is given if you subscribe to the idea that not all of it was planned, you know what I'm saying? Let's just bear with me here, okay? What I'm trying to say is, EcoHealth Alliance, just one organization working in collaborative partnership with like a few others, funded by a few others, is enough to thrust the world, into hell for a few years. Of course, that was largely pushed along by our reaction to it in the PSYOP on it. But so now you've got like suitcase nukes and suitcase chemical weapons, this, that, the other thing due to technological advancements.
Dude, this stuff looks like fucking
hands of non-state actors.
Evangelion. Look at this shit. This is wild. You guys think that they're gonna get how bad this is gonna get? Any thoughts on that? That's pretty crazy. I mean, that's a lot of people's wet dream to see them getting hit by missiles like that.
To secure our vital, critical infrastructure in both the civilian and the military domain. Remember, guys, this is not coming from me. This is just me having memorized the key points of all these various reports, which I'll be covering in the EMA series for those of you that follow me on Patreon and Substack, the newsletter. Let me see, because I'm tying this up, how is this related to Kamala Harris and her connections to a billionaire utopian city? California Forever? I haven't even heard of California Forever. Like, nobody was really talking about it, and I don't know why, but what I'm saying is the California Forever story, the prospect of building a billionaire utopian city in secret, surrounding a military base while all of this is happening, guys. On top of that, we already had instances such as Grand Forks Air Force Base and the Chinese. They have already been an issue. They tried to build a corn milling plant next to one of our Air Force bases in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So they're trying to infiltrate using these various like civilian domain companies for passive surveillance, subterfuge. But the real concern here, guys, is attack on American military's readiness.
You guys didn't miss much. It's been kind of a boring stream. It's just kind of been shitty. We were watching Rhodesia and South Africa stuff, and then it started getting warnings that it was going to get pulled, so I had to stop. And then we watched a thing on Albert Pike and what was it? The other, the Federal Reserve, basically just propaganda films.
The most likely attack we're going to face is like very subtle subterfuge and fuckery that disrupts functions of daily life, knocks out the internet, knocks out the power, derails a train, okay? Things like that. Kinetic attacks are going to increase as well as the population leads more and more into urban hellscapes, thus prompting these urban hellscapes to grow, thus those urban hellscapes growing to a point where they're butting up to the edges of American domestic military bases, thus they end up having to, out of necessity, form collaborative partnerships that over time dissolves the barrier between the military and the civilian domain.
Oh shit, that's some wild fucking Evangelion shit right there.
Dual-use technologies, synergistic scientific revolutions. Dual-use technologies, see, like this. I can take this device here, my phone, and I can visit a porn website, watch Netflix, okay? But I can...
Sorry, look at this one. This is fucking wild right here. Look at that, dude. You know, you like to see it, but then who knows what the fucking I
can also use it to conduct
the recourse is going to be by Israel.
Right.
I really hope they don't fucking drag us into a big ass conflict, dude. I hope people are waking up.
Given the increasing hyperconnectivity of the digital world, post-internet digital world, everything is connected to one another, aka if one aspect of a network is exploited, you bring down the rest of it, okay? So a prime example of that, the sort of Internet of Things, the blending of the physical world with the digital world, right? As our buddy Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum has always said, that's the primary dimension of the fourth industrial revolution, right? Hacking pacemakers with a laptop. I'm on a laptop, I'm using the internet, but I hacked into your heart. That's the future. That's the future. And if it's not your heart, it's your oxygen tank that you're breathing. It's not inside of you, but it's something you rely on. your subway train, now all of a sudden, nobody can make it into your Olympic city, right? That happened.
I mean, I'm all for fucking Israel getting their comeuppance, but like, it's just like one of these things where it's like, I don't see it turning out the way that we hope. Like, fucking the way that Trump has just backpedaled so much. And obviously we know who his fucking keepers are, but Jesus, dude. Like, it's hard to believe that they're getting struck in Tel Aviv. That's pretty wild to see. You know, is this, what the fuck is going to happen with that? You know, fucking Trump's not going to fucking allow that shit. His fucking handlers are just going to make it fucking our problem now.
There was a cyber attack as people were trying to, like, mid-transit.
What's up, Vincent?
That, like, the influx of attacks typically happen, like, around significant times. Now, mind you, this is all also happening in the same time frame as this weird, mysterious drone incursion that we're seeing. The Chinese spy balloon sort of falls into that, although that's not a drone. The high-altitude shoot-down events tie into that.
Dude, your buddy is about to turn into Hamburger pretty soon.
Of course. All of that is still secret, by the way. We showed the actual crash recovery of the Alaska shoot-down here on this channel. If you go to my YouTube, my BitChute, and my Rockfin, I would suggest BitChute and Rockfin because I'm actually suspended from YouTube for another 2 weeks, right? So what was I going to be saying there? So what we're seeing is like a dramatically, like I don't want to say dramatically, but not gradually either. Since 2018, there's been a huge influx of sightings, mostly of drone swarms and drone incursions of U.S. domestic military bases, and they seem to have no issues doing it. Langley Air Force Base, 2023. And I'm going to show you clips of all this, so please stick around, guys. But I'm on a roll here. This is more clear and less verbose than I anticipated.
Does the stuff that happened just recently in Russia with the attack on their bomber fleet give you guys any pause about what you think that thing that was happening in New Jersey, what that was all about?
This is quite condensed. I've struggled with trying to put this and frame it properly for a video. That's why I never followed up with the Flannery billionaire utopia story last year. But yeah, Langley Air Force Base 2023, several drones operating independently, meaning they were piloted independently. We're not talking about an autonomous drone swarm quite yet, although that's also on the horizon with the advent of AI, was able to intrude on the air of an Air Force Base, the restricted airspace of an Air Force Base. Not once, though. It wasn't just once. And there wasn't any kinetic activity or any malice. It seemed to be a message, right? Psychological warfare, look what we can do. No problem, you might be thinking, right? The Air Force probably had some fun shooting them all down or neutralizing them. The perpetrators have been arrested, taken care of under investigation and custody. None of that is the case. The drones went away. The Air Force couldn't find it, but don't worry, they came back the next night. And then,
Fuck, okay, so this is how they're gonna fucking distract us. This is how they're gonna do it right here. They're, distributing, this No Kings event thing. Let me unmute this. This is a rest stop of a bus driving around with 50 illegals.
Texas time, right there. Of course, the bus has no markings. No markings.
That's fucking wild, man. This is like the second time where they were doing the stuff with the fucking
USDOT.
flying immigrants in, man. Now they're doing the buses.
Or maybe the Gainesville. No, we're not.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Maybe a day passes, and then they came back again. And then again, and you know what's really strange about that? Is the Air Force, over a course of 2 weeks, could not neutralize the drones that were effortlessly impeding on their airspace to the point where they had to call in a NASA aircraft that specializes in surveillance, reconnaissance. Like, what is going on there? They never found who was behind that. Then we have Chinese nationals flying drones over Navy vessels in port, Busan Port, June 2024. This case differs in that it's
On the topic of what Jared's talking about in chat, I highly recommend if I've recommended it before, but if you still haven't heard it, go on to Scott Horton's channel, and there's an interview about how Israel was buying oil through a pipeline to a city there called Haifa from Iran, all the way up to at least 3 years past, where they had ended peaceful, I guess, communication after the uprising. So it does kind of hold water to what he's saying about how, you know, it is wrestling and theater. There's a guy, I can't remember if it was a comedian or who, when he was like, he saw the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan like sharing a cab. Was it Kurt Metzger or someone like that, talking about like how his like reality was shattered when he saw them both hanging out together? And it's so weird how like wrestling, one of the factions is called NWO, New World Order. It's like they're fucking just, it would be a great joke if the people at the top all loved wrestling, and this is how they just fuck with us.
more conventional. A Chinese national said, "Whoa, this cool ship," literally, basically, and flew it over, took photographs, videos. He said he was curious. This was the same day that the South Korean leader was visiting the same ship that that guy was filming, and the same day that a trilateral military naval exercise between Japan, South Korea, and America was going to take place in the coming days. That's why the Roosevelt was over there. Then you have the incidents filmed by Jeremy Corbell. See if I have that on cue. I don't know. I might not. All these drone swarms. I'll bring that up in a second. So let me just wrap it up, not wrap it up here, but get to my point, because I can't make this video very long. All of this, again, you might be asking, you know, how's this related to Kamala Harris, and what does it matter that that she has ties to this billionaire utopia city I've never heard about? Well, the thing is that the investors behind that utopian city, get this is a real surprise. This is going to really, really surprise you. At least 3 of them had Epstein ties, right? Which, you know, is kind of problematic. I'll break that down here for you. I'm going to play some clips. And in fact, not only did they have Epstein ties, but Kamala Harris and her team, right now, in the coming days, has plans to meet with one of the investors of California Forever, the billionaire utopian city that somehow eluded the FBI, the State Department, the Air Force, and other agencies trying to identify who they were for 5 years. Something fishy is going on there. Something Governor Newsom wasn't even aware of until they came out publicly in 2023 saying, all right, guys, it was us the whole time. We just bought a place twice the size of San Francisco, surrounded one of your military bases, right under your nose, without you even knowing who we were, blah, 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 blah. And it featured also Laureen Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, and business associate of Jeffrey Epstein. He visited the island. Kamala Harris is meeting with him. Reid Hoffman is a prominent Kamala Harris donor. All right? So with that said, I don't want to hold this up any further, okay? Remember to like, share, and subscribe. This is coming up on Rockfin First. I'm suspended on YouTube. Linktree, everything's in the description. I put effort into that. Also, if you wish to donate, you can do so. Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. PayPal.me, memory hold 7707. The rest is below. I appreciate your help, your assistance, and those already supporting me on Patreon for the extra days. See you on the other side of this.
You're so much The government says it knows almost nothing about the buyer or what the buyer wants to do with the land. Here's NBC Bay Area's Jody Hernandez.
We need that land around Travis Air Force Base protected.
But Fairfield Mayor Catherine Moy is extremely worried that a corporation that's bought thousands of acres of land encircling Travis Air Force Base could be up to no good.
It's over 50,000 acres of land. They're the largest landholder in Solano County now.
Over the past several years, a corporation called Flannery Associates.
Vincent, you watched the Owen Benjamin thing, didn't you? When Owen years ago talked about Monsters, Inc.
Its LLC has spent nearly $900 million on land around the Air Force Base, but nobody knows precisely who they are or what they intend to do with the property.
The bottom line question, who the hell are these people? We still don't know.
Congressman John Garamendi says national security could be at risk. He says the FBI and the Treasury Department are investigating.
Oh, that's crazy, because fucking, like, let's see, this would have been early Trump administration. Owen made, it had to have been at least 10 years ago, made a video talking about how, like, Monsters, Inc. was about, like, basically, like, child abduction. And, yeah, like, it was fucking crazy. It was so fucking nuts to, like, I would have never thought about that. It was like at the same time that he was breaking down the wall. Like Pink Floyd's The Wall.
It's very
so this is who Kamala Harris is connected to. One of the investors behind this, Reid Hoffman, a familiar name you might recall.
Concerning the land that they have purchased, which is right up against the fence on 3 sides of the base, positioning whoever is there to be in a place to gain intelligence, information, or possibly to disrupt operations.
Now over
readiness, operational readiness.
The past few days, Solano County residents have been getting surveys, both online and by phone, about plans for a ballot initiative to create a new city that would include tens of thousands of new homes, a solar energy farm, and 10,000 acres of parks and open.
I'm not insanely fond of him because he can be kind of stressing to listen to. But back when, like, it was like the wild days of YouTube and everybody wasn't banned, like, I used to listen to him and Stefan Molyneux. I like seeing that Stefan Molyneux is making a comeback. Yeah, everyone says Owen Benjamin's super racist. Like, dude, the fucking stuff that I see on so many other sites or, like, channels, he's just a fucking edgelord.
Open space.
They talked about providing down payment assistance to local residents.
George Kennedy was pulled by phone. He says the caller claimed the city would feel like a college town, include a new aqueduct system, and restore ecological habitats. He says it all sounded way too good to be true.
It just, doesn't pass the smell test to me.
They want to build a city, yet they haven't talked to anybody here.
Moy says if the new landowners incorporate their own city, they can rezone the land and issue their own building permits.
They have plenty of land for a city, but they're in for a fight.
Both local and federal leaders say a lot's at stake. Travis is currently transporting munitions to Poland for Ukraine. It's the busiest transit airport for the U.S. Air Force.
For an enemy to be able to be right next to the base, to monitor, to listen in to the communications, or possibly to disrupt the flow of equipment, it would certainly be possible to do that if you own the land adjacent to the fence line of Travis Air Force Base.
Now, as I said, who's connected?
The identities of powerful people who palled around with Jeffrey Epstein continue to be revealed. And a name we are very familiar with here on this channel now shows up as having visited the Epstein Island in 2014. His name is Reid Hoffman. You remember this guy right here. We've seen his photograph several times. And if you remember from the Trump prosecution mind map, which is available at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump if you want to check it out, Reid Hoffman is this person who actually was funding Roberta Kaplan and the litigation brought by E. Jean Carroll against Donald Trump. And that was a hidden
Recent reports reveal that this morning we're learning more about a mysterious company that has invested nearly $1 billion in buying farmland near a California airbase. Flannery Associates has paid $800 million for 54,000 acres of land outside of Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield. That's about 50 miles north of San Francisco, 30 west of Sacramento. Recent reports reveal that Flannery is a group of Silicon Valley investors planning to build a new city on the land. However, federal officials cannot confirm who is behind the company, and some are raising concerns about foreign involvement.
And why might they be worried about foreign involvement?
I find it very highly suspicious that our government didn't know about these land grabs. It really is so such fucking bullshit. And they'll just seize it. I mean, if they really wanted to, they can just fucking stop it. The law doesn't matter. They're from what I've learned from just being in fucking litigious situations, it's a matter of who knows who. You can change any law in the book to get what you want. And if you want to go and press the subject too much with whatever court, they'll just move it to a higher court, and then that higher court will say it's dismissed and we're not going to see it. And then that's the end of the show.
Let's find out.
Behind a massive land grab in Solano County is now in the hot seat, facing the second round of questions from congressional leaders.
It was a continuation of my disappointment.
For the first time in
Sorry if that's low. He has low volume on this.
sat down with the CEO of Flannery Associates, former Goldman Sachs trader Jan Schremek, to discuss his vision for a so-called utopia. A new city in eastern Solano County focused on affordable housing, clean energy, and sustainable infrastructure. But Garamendi says their proposed plans could hurt Travis Air Force Base.
It's very, very clear that they intend to go to an initiative to change the zoning requirements for that entire 55,000 acres. In doing so, they may very well diminish or eliminate the protections that Travis Air Force Base presently has. So I remain very, very concerned.
Did they specify to you specific plans they wanted to do with that land surrounding the base? Why they bought it in the first place?
I'd really, really, really like to stream that documentary. We have to talk about Sandy Hook, but I definitely couldn't do it on this platform. I'd get fucking removed so quickly. I don't know if I might eventually set up my Rumble account to start streaming.
No specific development plans were given to us, and I don't believe they have any specific development plans. I think they had a pie in the sky, a fairy tale.
Congressman Mike Thompson shared similar concerns. The I-Team spoke with him last week.
If the intent here is to build a city, why do you think the land surrounding Travis Air Force Base was a priority years ago?
Well, I asked them about that because their city plans, their new city plans, are considerably distanced from some of the properties that they were purchasing. And they had, I guess, an explanation for why they bought some of those properties. And it ranged from anywhere from housing that they wanted.
Now remember, this sketchy maneuvering on part of Reid Hoffman, Laureen Powell-Johns, the people behind this billionaire utopia plan, Flannery Associates, aka California Forever, they did all of this knowing they were scaring people for 5 years before they told anybody, hey, no worries here, nothing to see. And it's because of stuff like this. See if we have to run an ad first. This is News Nation.
In the city of Grand Forks, North Dakota, a group of determined residents fought back against a project planned by a Chinese company suspiciously close to an Air Force base. And they
Sound familiar? This was Grand Forks, North Dakota, Air Force Base in Grand Forks. Chinese wanted to build a corn milling plant, quote unquote.
One. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton is live in Grand Forks. And Brian, the opposition was quite vocal.
It was, Nicole. We are outside Grand Forks Air Force Base now, and at the end of the day, this is really a story about everyday American people who took on China, who took on their own city council because they were so worried that this Chinese corn mill was going to go in very, very close to this military base.
Mind you, sorry about that, the volume was a bit low. The citizens, they fought back. They were so concerned about this corn milling plant being so close to a military base.
One. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton is live in Grand Forks. And Brian, the opposition was quite vocal.
It was, Nicole. We are outside Grand Forks Air Force Base now, and at the end of the day, this is really a story about everyday American people who took on China, who took on their own city council because they were so worried that this Chinese corn mill was going to go in very, very close to this military base.
See, and what's interesting about that is it was planned to go in pretty close, miles away from the base. And the corn milling plant, newsflash if you haven't, put it together, a corn milling plant is a lot smaller than tens of thousands of acres, comprising a swath of land twice the size of the city of San Francisco. And yet these people, they reacted as if it was the sky was falling, the citizens were, we gotta protect the homeland, because food security comes into play here, right? So Flannery Associates, Reid Hoffman, Laureen Powell Jobs, both connected to Jeffrey Epstein, okay? It's not even counting the others. They're trying to build a utopian city, probably like a technocratic, green energy, sustainable city next to a military base. Let's bring it back to the strategic trend reports, the RAND reports, the Homeland is no longer a sanctuary reports, the blurring of the military and civilian domain because every device now has military capabilities, offensive capabilities. What is a physical
I'm assuming this is a protest of U.S. soldiers not wanting to go to war for Israel. I don't know if you guys see this. U.S. soldiers wearing Vietnam-era fatigues have taken to the streets of D.C. I guess they're doing some kind of parade. I don't know what that means.
Manifestation than the dissolving barrier between the military and civilian domains than a billionaire Silicon Valley luminary, smart city technocrat, walkable hellscape being built around a military base, the most critical one. The one that has to contend with China, the one that we would all go through if we were sent to China. When every other problem we're seeing, like that North Dakota incident, the corn milling plant, that's Chinese. A lot of these drone incidents, Chinese. We took the fight against China, they said, right? And yet, in this case, the Flannery Associates case, this Silicon Valley group managed to catch everybody by surprise, shield their identities, shield their intentions for 5 years, stoke fears around national security concerns that legitimate congressmen of the 8th and 6th District of California went across media outlets, numerous appearances, bang, 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 bang. John Garamendi and Mike Thompson saying, we've got a national security issue. Look, we had this North Dakota Grand Forks case with the Chinese corn milling plant. And now we've got this. They refuse to tell us who they are, refuse to talk to any local urban planners, leaders, whatever, urban developers, nobody. Nobody at the local, state, federal level, nobody, apparently. And they're able to shield their identities how? Delaware state law. They created a company, an LLC called Flannery Associates, okay? And that's going to be our connection point between Kamala Harris, one of them, and this billionaire utopia plan. Okay, Flannery Associates was used as the forward-facing, public-facing company that the anonymous billionaire Silicon Valley luminary investors were using to send the money and buy the land with. Okay. Hold on here, I'm pulling up a map for you. So the official narrative that they expect us to believe or just accept is that every single person from the local level to the state level to the federal level, all the way up to Governor Newsom, no, I'm not kidding, Governor Newsom apparently had no idea that a plot of land twice the size of San Francisco was just bought by anonymous individuals nobody knows their identities of, their intentions of, all in the midst of like a Chinese infiltration of the U.S. food sector, the mid.
Nice, some more video footage of that's Tel Aviv right now.
West, etc.
I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
So
if it's maybe it's just
every parcel that
maybe they're not as powerful. Like you were saying the other day on Low Value Mail, Slav, like they're maybe not very good at ground war. Their true strength is espionage. But I don't know, like, was it a psyop that the first time when the Iron Dome didn't protect them very well from that first strike that they got a few months back? And we still haven't seen really the effects, because all I hear is Hezbollah is a powerful foe to reckon with, but they really haven't stepped in much. I'm wondering when they're going to do it.
Flannery owns, actually. So the purple tiles, as you see here, is every single parcel that Flannery Associates, aka the forward-facing LLC, being used by the billionaire Silicon Valley investors, Reid Hoffman, Laurene Powell Jobs, Michael Moritz, and so on, to buy this land. So this is Rio Vista Junction. Let's go ahead and get our bearings here. There it is. Okay, so this is Travis Air Force Base right here, as you can see. Okay, Fairfield is over here. The woman that was speaking in the first clip, her, that's Mayor Moy. She's the mayor of Fairfield, which is literally right next to Travis Air Force Base. Actually, I posted one of my theories on Twitter when it was still Twitter. No, I think it was X. I posted one of my theories on there about Solano County, kind of just floating. It wasn't too crazy, but I was floating some more out there ideas. And she responded in the affirmative, you know, so that's interesting. Her ignorance on the matter seems genuine. In other words, it's not like everybody is feigning ignorance, maybe at least not with her. But that's the question. How did everybody apparently not know this was happening, including Governor Newsom. But anyway, resuming, as you can see, they do surround the base in a way. Okay, see the parcels up here, all the way up here. And what I did was I cross-referenced this with like natural resource maps. Okay, wind, solar, like there's a bunch of solar farms that like all down here is a wind farm. Note
shit,
that they
there's some
bought
more
all
footage
that,
right there.
because it's going to be a sustainable city. All right, and they're going to need to generate, you know, have lots of space for solar panels and so on. But my point is the city is going to be down here, right?
Some more footage. Who's waiting? Are you talking about Hezbollah's waiting, or is Israel waiting for their retaliation to this? Because it is interesting to see the great Satan not as strong when you stand up to it.
Okay, the main city, if you look at the California Forever map, is going to be down here, and yet they made it a point, despite the heightened sensitivities and fears around Chinese incursions in the U.S. homeland, namely...
It's wild to see these fucking Jews in the fucking comment section of these videos saying, I can't believe they're attacking civilians. I mean, Jesus Christ, the fucking gall of you to go and say that.
Food security is a big topic right now. The North Dakota incident sparked a broader conversation with results, actually, from the Biden administration, in fact. So my question is, why do they surround the base if their city's going to be down here? Right? So I began, as I started looking into this, because remember, at the time, we had no idea who they were, including myself. Nobody knew who they were, what their plans were. So I said, I wonder if we can reverse engineer, or deduce what their plans and intentions are, or perhaps who they are, based on the type of parcels that they're buying, right? So if they're going after, you know, one type of one type of resource, and only one type of resource, right, that kind of maybe tells you something about the intentions. And as I began, and this is not really like very complicated, and most people would have thought this, I wasn't far from the only one. Anyway, I looked it up, and I was basically found, hey, look, you know, they're about all this natural resource, the better pieces of land. Most of this is barren and unzoned, right? And the other element that hinted to their nature was the fact that they were buying these parcels for 3 times the market value, which makes you wonder, why would this group that has seemingly endless cash flow be buying parcels of land that have no water access, no streets, no real anything? It's barren, unzoned land. In other words, you have a bunch of hurdles to jump through before you can do anything with it, whatever. And yet they made sure to spend 3 times the market value, aka, what does that tell you? What does that tell me? What did it tell me at the time? It told me at the time they really wanted the land surrounding Travis Air Force Base. Why? Why might that be? And I got to thinking, you know, what they're doing actually fits the proposals of the broader security paradigm that we're going into, shifting from the counterterrorism paradigm to the homeland is no longer a sanctuary paradigm. Let me see if I'll pull this up. In other words, because the focus is here back home, we need to transform our military bases, and because the barrier between military and civilian domains is blurring, the military is now taking advantage of, guess what? Silicon Valley startup companies. Why? The R&D to battlefield pipeline that has done the military well up until recently is no longer fast enough from development to testing to application to battlefield fucking people up. Not fast enough. We can't keep up with China, because guess what? China is top down. Every company in China is the military, essentially. That's why we worried about a Chinese corn milling plant. Don't mind me, I'm just milling corn. No, you're not. Inherently, because the Chinese ruling governance system, you're an extension of the Chinese military, okay? So because that's all blending. And because this is happening and this mysterious ignorance of everybody seemingly not knowing, it made me think that, like, maybe everybody did know. Or at least the key players knew, like Newsom. How did he not know? And I'm reading these reports, okay, the military is buddying up with Silicon Valley. They're utilizing startup tech companies as a way to quicken the R&D, technological development, weapon system platforms, capabilities pipeline to keep up with China, because they can do it super quick, because they're just like, fuck you, do this, I'm not a democracy, whatever. Over here we have to follow certain protocols, thank God, right? But how do we do that? Well, and still keep up with China. Only way to do that, guys, is through startup companies, Silicon Valley startup companies. And then all of a sudden, mysteriously, the biggest names in Silicon Valley pop up out of nowhere, but are pretending that they're not them. They're shielding their identities, buys up all the land, and everybody's like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was happening.
Oh, shit.
Travis Air Force Base, oh my God, I didn't even know this was happening. Fairfield Mayor.
They're having protests in Tel Aviv.
Town council, town supervisor, this looks like a hostile takeover. I had no idea about any of this. Governor Newsom, let me actually cue up what Governor Newsom had to say about this. So this clip was literally, I think, taken at a Politico event, the media outlet.
This is that clip I showed you guys yesterday when he was pretending to have just found out by the newspaper about this land being purchased.
This clip was recorded just last year, so we're led to believe, or expected to believe by the establishment, that from 2018 to 2023, that point that this video was recorded in 2023, Governor Newsom had no idea that something so expansive was happening next to the most critical military base, or one of them, on the West Coast. Let's take a look. In it, he's asked, did California Forever, aka Flannery Associates, did they give you a heads up about what was happening? Let's hear what he has to say, because surely...
I think the protests there are due to them wanting to not be ruled by Bibi Netanyahu is what the protest is. No, that's protest in Israel. There's they don't cover it that much, but they have been protesting a lot against Netanyahu being their leader. They almost ousted him, and then he was on trial, and he was getting really close to going to jail, him and his wife, maybe a month or two ago, and then right in the middle of when he was just about to testify, they pulled him out for something else, and saved his ass. I don't know how it works, but he didn't end up having to be on stand for his corruption charges.
Well, the answer is yes. Obviously, I mean, are you kidding me? It has to be. Of course, Governor Newsom knew about it, right?
Did they give you a heads up?
No, I read about it.
After it was already announced?
I was told about 5 minutes before my phone lit up that there was an article about to post. And I was immediately intrigued. They said, you'll be more intrigued after you see it.
Wow. Immediately intrigued. Immediately intrigued that, like, a swath of land twice the size of San Francisco just disappeared from underneath my feet. I'm immediately intrigued. I had no idea about this. And his response was, like, standoffish, too. Now, he references an article there. All of a sudden, all of his phones are ringing simultaneously. You're not going to believe this. Politico article's about to drop. If he's getting a heads up and an article about it is about to drop, why didn't they give him a heads up about any of the project before that? That's crazy. So the article he's referencing is this one here from, I think, the New York Times, because in August 2023, after 5 years of silence, the Flannery Associates Anonymous Billionaires Mystery Group, scooping up all that land, they came clean. They said, guys, let me introduce you to us, the Silicon Valley luminaries, Reid Hoffman, Maureen Powell Jobs, and the rest of them. And I think this is the article where they announced it for the first time.
And we're learning a wealthy investor group is buying thousands of acres of farmland near Travis Air Force Base in Solano County. And California lawmakers are now proposing restrictions to protect that land. Since 2018, a group known as Flannery Associates has bought more than 50,000 acres of farmland near the Air Force Base. Some proposals being considered to protect the farmland include more disclosure of agricultural land purchases and prohibiting foreign ownership of farms. A survey indicates that Flannery is considering a futuristic new city on the farmland, but others say that threatens the future of the air base.
Travis Air Force Base cannot operate surrounded by skyscrapers, wind turbines,
like
track
a fun girl
homes,
to be
right
around.
up to the fence line. No military base can.
The ABC 7 News
And what gets even more interesting, which leads over to my theory, is I guess what I'm trying to say here is it's the New York Times that published an article about it, and hold this up. Yeah, the article is called "The Secret Silicon Valley Elite Who Want to Build a City from Scratch." Sorry about that. Here it is. New York Times, the Silicon Valley elite who want to build a city from scratch. Mysterious company has spent $800 million in an effort to buy 1,000 acres. In other words, I'm pretty sure this is the first article, or one of them, that really brought their names to the forefront. Michael Moritz being a brainchild, but really the whole thing was masterminded by a guy named Jan Schramek. But here they go into all the people that are backing the project. Patrick and John Collison. Laureen Powell Jobs. Let's see who else.
I didn't know that there was a name for them. I'll look up and see if there's any good documentaries on that.
Of course, I'm forgetting the names off the top of my head. Hey, if you're still listening, can you give me a list of the investors behind the California Forever Billionaire Utopia City project in Solano County, California?
Hey yo, what's up, Little False Flag? The investors behind the California Forever project include prominent figures such as Mark Andreessen, Laureen Powell Jobs, Patrick and John Collison, Reid Hoffman, Michael Moritz, Nat Friedman. These investors are part of a group aiming to develop a new city in Solano County, California. Anything specific you want to know about the project or its investors?
Yeah, I want to know just about everything, but
Mary Nancy D'Alessandro.
Just give me one moment, I'll follow up.
Here, let me, this is only 2 minutes long. Let me play this real quick.
Daughter of Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., who was known for smuggling heroin into the U.S. Married Nancy D'Alessandro, daughter of Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., who was known for smuggling heroin into the U.S. with Lucky Luciano and the Baltimore Mafia. John Pelosi's son Ron married William Newsom's daughter Barbara. Over ongoing disputes about the Squaw Valley concession, William Newsom Sr. threatened to hurt the governor politically, just as Governor Brown was running for a third term against Ronald Reagan. He lost. But 8 years later, the former governor's Jesuit son, Jerry, reclaimed the governorship in 1974. He appointed William Newsom III to a Placer County judgeship in 1975, and 3 years later, to the State Court of Appeal. William Newsom was an attorney for oil magnate J. Paul Getty, named in the 1966 Guinness Book of World Records as the world's richest private citizen. And while serving on the appellate bench in the 1980s, he helped Getty's son, Gordon, secure a change in state trust law that allowed him to claim his share of a multi-heir trust. After Newsom retired from the bench, he became administrator of the Getty Trust and provided seed money for his son Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi's nephew, to start the plump jack business that led to a
that's
career in
interesting.
San
I didn't know that
Francisco
was
politics. As mayor of San Francisco and lieutenant governor of the state of California. Gavin Newsom was informally adopted by the Gettys after his parents divorced, and recently succeeded family friend Jerry Brown to be the current governor of California. For 80 years, these four families have ruled over the state of California politically. And with the help of Kamala Harris, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and Dianne Feinstein, California's uncontrollable state government spending has amounted to over $2.
That's crazy.
Funny, right? Okay, so there's your breakdown. Those are some pretty prominent names, right? And here's Laureen Powell Jobs, for those of you that don't remember when this happened. As you can see, we've got Laureen Powell Jobs here.
Yeah, those are definitely some big names involved.
Oh, hey.
Laureen Powell Jobs.
Calm down. Listen, I asked you once, doesn't mean I want to. I hung out with you once, doesn't mean I want to hang out and be your friend all the time. Okay. Cool. This is a picture of Laureen Powell Jobs.
That's crazy.
On the left, Ghislaine Maxwell on the right. Interestingly,
I've seen that picture before.
This photo is kind of like mysterious, but it's the consensus is that it's real. You might remember the incident involving a particularly controversial. I can't speak today. Sorry, controversial article The Atlantic put out. Kind of like, I don't know, it was like an apologetic for Epstein or sex chat, something like that. I don't know, let me see. Hey, what was the issue with The Atlantic? They caught some flack, I think, like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Laureen Powell Jobs, people were saying, I don't know, The Atlantic, of course, they would publish an article slighting, people concerned about the Epstein case. Laureen Powell Jobs owns a stake of The Atlantic or something. Is that true? See if he responds. What's Laureen Powell Jobs' involvement with The Atlantic?
All right. Vincent said it. All right. I was thinking it. I just wasn't saying it.
Stake in The Atlantic through her organization, Emerson Collective. Emerson Collective is a social impact organization she founded, which invests in various areas, including media, education, immigration reform, and health.
Yeah.
Laureen Powell.
All right. Let's go back to Reid Hoffman world. What's all this matter, right?
Yeah, Ghislaine is the area between her big ass Jew tits.
I'll show you why it matters, because Reid Hoffman, well, he's a Kamala Harris supporter.
So are you all in on Vice President Harris, and what specifically are you doing to support her campaign?
Well, I was already a great supporter of the Biden-Harris ticket. I'm continuing those efforts and redoubling them. So I'd already maxed.
Just to double down, just to remind you, this guy was on Epstein's Island. And he did a sleepover at Epstein's New York City townhouse. So it wasn't just one thing, it was a business opportunity. He visited Little St. James after Epstein was a convicted sexual offender and known to be doing his things to the underage girls, the kids. And yet Reid Hoffman was like, yeah, I'll take that business opportunity. Sounds good. I like that cash money though, baby. Went to the island, comfy sleepover at Epstein's New York City townhouse in New York. No, I don't think Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, was there wearing his cute little headscarf to obscure his face, like these billionaires' identities did for 5 years using Delaware state law. But yeah, they had a little comfy sleepover. How adorable.
Next out to Biden-Harris.
And he's a big Kamala supporter, and Kamala Harris's team is meeting with him this week.
Am I allowed to put it?
And he's building a fucking technocratic smart city outside of a military base in the midst of a time period when the barriers between the civilian and military domain are dissolving. So he's building a city right next to the military base, right during the peak of the U.S. military utilizing Silicon Valley startup companies to leverage military weaponry, platforms, capabilities to keep up with China in the greater modernization race of our military, to keep up with them and secure the homeland, okay? I'll have to do an extended thing on this, of course, but where were we've lost my tab. Sorry, I paused it again. I lost myself there. I don't even know where I'm picking up necessarily. I think we're watching the Reid Hoffman clip. So we know that he is a big Kamala Harris supporter. He's connected to Jeffrey Epstein, visited his island, slept over at the townhouse, and is now meeting up with Kamala Harris and her team to talk about the future.
More money to Harris, but I will continue to contribute to the various, kind of the issue and other support organizations, which will continue the advocacy for what kind of America we want to see.
Continuing to unite our party.
What do you want to see when it comes to the vice presidential pick? Who do you want her to pick?
Whether it ranges from great governor choices like Governor Whitmer or Governor Shapiro. I think there's Mark Kelly. I think there's exceptional cabinet members like Gina Raimondo.
It's interesting, two of the names that you mentioned, Gina Raimondo and Governor Whitmer. What do you make of the idea of maybe having two women on the ticket?
Well, I think it's great to demonstrate the fact that in America, we can also join the other amazing democracies and have a woman as president.
And we have an election to win!
And women leadership is something that's very dear to us and very capable, and so I think that would be awesome.
What about a business leader as the vice president, such as Mark Cuban?
I think that would be awesome and bold. Vice President Harris has the ability to signal that not only have they done great things in their 4 years of the administration, but new things and making her own mark. And that's one of the things I think is so exciting about her candidacy. And so I think that could be an excellent way of doing that.
So we've heard a lot about tech titans backing former President Trump. Others are obviously anti-Trump. What's the vibe?
So you get the idea. This is happening during like a wider, lots of bigger picture things happening. Obviously, a lot is going on recently. But if you were to Google Silicon Valley right now, or at least earlier today, or Kamala Harris, there was articles popping up about Silicon Valley and how Silicon Valley needs to rally around Kamala Harris and support her. There's multiple articles about that. Now, Reid Hoffman's support doesn't just end at promoting Kamala Harris, going way back with her. Okay, check it out. The spokesperson for Flannery Associates, okay, remember the billionaire utopian city Flannery Associates, that's the LLC they used to shield their identities before people like Reid Hoffman, Laureen Powell Jobs, and so on, wanted it to be known formally that, they were buying all this land. What the motive was, we don't know. But anyway, here is the source here. And by the way, all the sources shown as everything will be on the Substack, guys. You can subscribe to the newsletter for free for essays, videos, data dumps you won't get here, or you can actually, do more than just follow. You can subscribe to it. You get access to the Elite Mindset Analysis, Globalist book, summary analysis series, extra essays, extra articles, pointed description with Epstein Townhouse, comfy, cozy, sleepover having, Reid Hoffman. Presidential Campaign's Policy Director and Deputy Chief of Staff are sitting with Hoffman on a, quote, business leaders for Harris Zoom call.
This is a good point right here. This is fucking, they always say that Hamas is using civilians as human shields, and then they go and launch fucking missiles from the fucking center of the city like this.
Interesting. In a Friday news dump, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman under fire for explicitly stating on national television that Kamala Harris should fire Federal Trade Commission Chair Lena Khan if she became president, tries to backpedal. Quote, I've never spoken with Vice President Harris about Lena Khan. Already there's drama. This is funny. I don't want to read on. I'm not saying it's not worth your time, but really I just needed to show you confirmation here that this was happening. But I also want to show you that calls for Silicon Valley to unify behind Kamala Harris is also happening. So I'll bring up something like that here. Actually, before I do that, New York Post article confirming Reid Hoffman visited Epstein's private island. I forgot to tell you the origin of that information stems from, if you recall, the Wall Street Journal expose from like spring 2023. It included information from Epstein's calendar of meetings. He had these meetings penciled in, and there was a slew of powerful, influential names from the world of finance to even intelligence, of course, intelligence. I mean, that's kind of Epstein's bread and butter. Whoops, screech, didn't mean to do that. Former William Burns, Bill Burns, Epstein was meeting with him. That was revealed for the first time. We didn't have records of that previously. He was going to meet with now director Bill Burns before he was the director of the CIA, for example. The Woody Allen stuff and the connections to Jeffrey Epstein, that came out from the Wall Street Journal calendar expose. And it was Reid Hoffman and his meeting, his visit to the island, etc. That also, if I recall correctly, came out of that. But anyway, yeah, LinkedIn billionaire Reid Hoffman visited Epstein's private island, planned to visit New York City mansion. Hey, bot, are you still with me? Tell me about LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman. What's the deal with Jeffrey Epstein? Is he one of those little slot pigs visiting the island?
I don't know if you guys also know this, but Ghislaine Maxwell, there was a whole story about her being the top poster with the most points on Reddit. Like, they linked it back to her being the biggest, like the most points and the first person to 1 million points on Reddit. It was kind of interesting. I think that story broke like a year ago.
Hey, little false flag, what's happening, man? You streaming or what? Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, did have some connections to Jeffrey Epstein. He hosted Epstein at a dinner in 2015 and visited Epstein's private island in the Caribbean. However, Hoffman has publicly expressed regret for associating with Epstein, stating that he was unaware of Epstein's criminal activities at the time. He has since condemned Epstein's actions.
All right, thanks. I'll check back in a moment if I need you for anything.
Sounds good. I'm here whenever you need me.
Whether I want it or not, I guess, nowadays. Anyway, you could look at his resignation, this letter that was released by, it's one of those long names. National Legal and Policy Center. This is basically just shitting on Reid Hoffman like crazy. I had a summary here, hold on. Actually, you know what? This will be a good demonstration of GPT's capabilities here. This might be a big flop. I'm going to take a risk here for him because I literally can't find it, but let's see if it remembers. I attached...
Didn't he also have ties to Microsoft? There was something in Microsoft that he was tied to.
The letter we're looking at here just a second ago, but I don't know where this summary is. I had a nice summary. Hey, do you remember, I can't remember if it was this chat thread, do you remember the screen caps? It was like 5 of them that I sent you about Reid Hoffman from the National Legal and Policy Center. I think it was directed to Microsoft. If you do, can you tell me the key points, like what it was saying? I don't know if you remember. It's weird, sometimes it doesn't pick it up. It's because I'm talking to you guys.
Oh shit. You think that these people are going to get tracked down like the J6 people? Supposedly anti-ICE protesters broke down the barricades at the U.S. Capitol. What a good time. What a good distraction for what's going on in Israel right now. What good timing. That's amazing timing right there.
Capitol Police are responding to the break. Capitol Police are responding to those who broke through the Capitol barriers.
They are bringing out the veterans now who were detained.
That's weird. Capitol Police actually responding to protesters. Very odd.
Regarding Reid Hoffman.
Well, it's from the National Legal and Policy Center, from Miss Sandra E. Peterson.
Got it. What are you interested in knowing about Miss Sandra E. Peterson's letter from the National Legal and Policy Center regarding Reid Hoffman? Are you looking for a summary, details about the content, or some specific aspect of the letter?
Just looking for a summary. Give me the key points.
A letter from Ms. Sandra E. Peterson at the National Legal and Policy Center regarding Reid Hoffman outlines concerns about his influence and activities.
All right. I'm going to have to wrap it up because it's 12 o'clock right now. But we'll watch the rest of this. And next time, I don't know. Tomorrow's Friday. I might do something tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys being on here. If you like the stream, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Sorry it was a little boring today. I've been kind of tired and didn't have much creativity in my self right now. I'll try to find some new stuff and get a little bit more creative. Appreciate you guys being here. I hope you have a good night. We'll try to wrap up this guy's video. And I'll dig through my stuff and see what else I have for next time. Thank you guys for being here, and have a good night.